Alrighty, so your head may be spinning from the first hour-ish, and really that was a design goal because, even the basics, there's a lot to it, right? So this isn't meant to scare you. It is literally meant to help you to have better information so that you can make some decisions and so that you can gain some wisdom, because just like the basics that I explained to you, what I'm about to share with you is real, it's true, I'm not making it up, I'm not trying to overstate it. What we're about to get into, literally happens. Again, as part of my street cred goes, literally I've been doing this for almost 40 years, and I also do it for a living. So I have responsibility for websites with a multi-billion-dollar corporation that also takes transactions in retail locations. So these things that we're going to get into really exist. We look at it every day and we talk about it every day within, from a business perspective, because our goal is to make sure our customers are safe and secure, as well as our financial health within the organization that I work for. So the darker side of tech. So an explanation about what the cloud is. So the cloud for some of us is a relatively new term, but it's really the internet, and it's how the internet works. So the cloud is just a maturing of the internet. It's a way to describe where computing power is now, as well as data. So really think of the cloud as, instead of my local hard drive is now in the internet. It's part of the cloud. And you can actually use computers in the cloud. So for instance, in my line of business, we spend, let's say $1 million a year having physical computers within our organization in data centers, to be able to do our transaction processing and stuff like that. The cloud allows us to use that same computing equipment in the internet. So instead of having physical computers in a building that we own and operate, we can actually use that somewhere else, because really the same thing is happening. In order for a cash register in a grocery store to operate, it's talking to other computers somewhere else. So it's going over some form of transmission line, and we'll just call that the internet. And the end point of that is another computer that's doing something with that information, and then it comes back to the cash register. So this example shows that we have a laptop that connects to a router. So this is your home. So many of us that use Wi-Fi at home are connecting to some form of Wi-Fi device known as a router. And then in order for it to do something, it needs to connect to the cloud. Now within the cloud are computers that are figuring out what it is you want to do. So for example, I use Time Warner for my internet connection from home. In order for me to do that, my router has to plug into a physical connection, and then from whence it goes, no one knows, right? Well, but there's ways to figure out where it's going, but the point being is it's literally probably bouncing out to data centers that they have in Syracuse or in central New York, and then it's making its way out to wherever I'm asking to go, and then it comes back. So we could travel over physical connections throughout the country, probably bouncing off of satellites in order to get to places. But the point being that really the cloud is a manifestation of Moore's law, meaning technology is doubling every 2 years, and now what used to be a physical machine within the confines of something we control, that no longer exists. We are giving our information to the cloud, and we're giving that to other people, and we're hoping it's safe. We're hoping Time Warner's doing its due diligence, Verizon, AOL, the stuff that I'm typing on my computer when I'm going to the internet, goes through. So let's go through this. So from my laptop, let's say I want to go to Living Hope Community Church. In order for me to facilitate doing that, I type in lhim.org. It goes from my computer into the router goes into this mysterious cloud. The cloud figures out how to get to Living Hope. But guess what? Living Hope is actually a computer in Ohio, let's say. So Living Hope, our website, may be running on computers in Ohio. Well, Ohio is a long way away from, Latham, New York. And in order to get there, it's going through another set of computers in order to figure out how to go. And then coming back, it goes from Ohio through perhaps Virginia, because Virginia has, tons and tons of data centers. And then it makes it back to my home and then back to my computer. The reason I'm mentioning this and explaining this is in order to facilitate using the internet, your information is touching many computers that you are probably not aware of. And that's why, going back to the basics, you want to be attentive to what information am I putting in, because even though mentally I'm putting it into this device, my home protected computer within my home, it's going to an open channel Wi-Fi router. And so you could have this stupid little kid in your neighborhood that has a program that is monitoring your Wi-Fi traffic. Can do it today. So one of our early on experiments in the business that I'm in, we sat outside the parking lot of one of our retail stores. We ran some scanning, and we monitored the Wi-Fi. And as a proof of concept, to test the security, we were able to show that sitting in the parking lot of a retail location, because it had Wi-Fi, we were able to get all the way back to our corporate systems, to a mainframe, and we were able to show a payroll file for a key executive within the company. And that was 15 years ago. So we had a problem. And the reason I'm mentioning that is the same is true about your home computing environment. So you're going through a router that's Wi-Fi enabled. And we'll talk about some of the vulnerabilities of that and some of the things that you should be doing. It's handing off to other computing systems that are gathering information about you. So for example, by definition, in order to use a website, every activity that you do is logged. It goes to a log. So I can tell you, if you're using a computing system within my organization, I can tell you what you clicked on, when you clicked on it, how long it took you from the first click to the second click, and because you gave me your credentials, I can then tell you that it was you. I can do this today. I've been able to do this for 2 decades. And the same is true about the internet. So again, the cloud is a maturing of the internet. It's in a way, it's a manifestation of Moore's law. What we used to think about, we're safe and secure with using our home computer in the 80s. It has gotten so far advanced that we don't even think about that. We're basically, our digital fingerprint is literally global. If you ever get a chance to read the terms and conditions of a website, probably on page 40, it talks about that they aggregate your data. And what that means is, although they personally don't identify you, Donna, as being Donna, they take everybody here and they sell that activity to others. So, by buying shoes from this particular website, they sell that information to say, hey, guess what? Black 4-inch pumps are selling like crazy in Latham, New York. Well, how do they know that? Well, they've aggregated the data, and people are paying for that privilege of learning and knowing that 4-inch black pumps are selling like wildfire in Latham, New York, and guess what? You're going to get now a sale for brown pumps or whatever. That's Google, that's AOL, that's Yahoo. That's the digital marketing of today. The way they do that is because all of this is being gathered and collected. So here's some internet truths. Most of your activity is logged and traceable. Most of your activity is sold and or purchased. Most of your activity is kept for decades. So I literally did this yesterday as I was finalizing this. So I thought, hey, I'll type in Google, Thom Riley, Waterville, New York. What I found is the fourth line, so I have a LinkedIn and I have a bunch of other digital fingerprints throughout the internet, but the fourth line within the Google search, because I did Waterville, New York, which is where I grew up and went to school, was a link to classmates.com or something like that, right? So I graduated high school in 1981. Remember we did the slide about the 80s, right? And it was all personal computing. But what I found is two pictures that they displayed to me as kind of a, hey, let me draw you in, from a yearbook from 1980. I didn't put the yearbook up. I had nothing to do with the Waterville High School 1980 yearbook being digitized and put on the internet. Yet my name and my image are in that yearbook. My class information, the different things that I participated in are in that yearbook. Back in 1980, it was a physical document, but someone was enticed into providing that electronically. And then what happens is people, from the 1980s class are given, incentive to join and, hey, tell us about this, that, and the other thing. And I actually had comments about me that I had nothing to do with that are now available in classmates.com. So it's there today, and it's going to be there, frankly, forever, for decades from now. So this was, 1980. The idea of the internet really didn't exist as far as we know it, and yet it's out there now, stored in the internet, and I had nothing to do with it. And it was searchable, and I literally did this yesterday. So guess what about the activities that are happening today? So whether you're doing it or not, others may be also doing it for you. So don't buy the lie that you're 100% safe using a website, an online service, etc. Information that you supply to websites, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, Twitter, etc., are storable. By definition, they have to store it even for a moment. Otherwise, it can't happen. And therefore, it can be usable for years and years later, especially if that information is sold in aggregate form or that it's stolen. So think of this. You have these logs where all this information is collected, and it's collected purposely because it wants to be marketed, aggregated. So even though it isn't Midge per se, it's still been collected and gathered. But that information does point back to Midge. If you really wanted to look at it, I could tell you, through looking at the logging, that this is Midge. But my intent as a business, I'm just going to aggregate it so I can get some money about telling about the pumps being on sale in Latham. So my intent was just to provide anonymous information for a sales purpose. What if it gets stolen though? Midge is in that data. So now it's been stolen. So the contract that I made with you about aggregating the data, I'm sorry, it got stolen. Midge now, the folks in Russia know everything about that purchase. They got your credit card information. Again, going back to the basics, if you're not following the basics, we're in trouble. Because if we're not doing the basics, we have no hope, because these happen today. You know, Target as a retailer 6 years ago was hacked. That hack was done through the air conditioning, the HVAC software that an independent third party had access to. They got hacked, and because they didn't have the proper security in place, because they got hacked, the whole entire Target corporation databases were able to get hacked. These folks were then able to put software on the POS systems within Target stores, and guess what? Your credit information was being monitored and sent off, you know, to another country for use, for, you know, and sale. That was the Target hack. The federal government, you've heard about those hacks, you know, where your information has been stored, it got stolen, and now you get a letter from the IRS. We're sorry to inform you, but you know, your 2015 tax returns may have been compromised. Yeah, so these things really happen. Again, if we're not following the basics, they're going to go after us first, rather than those of us that are following the basics, because it's going to be harder and harder, and they're going to move on. So, therefore, do your best to understand the risks and follow best practices for keeping yourself safe. I'm not afraid of the bear that's chasing us, because I know I can run faster than you. You know, and think about that with what I said about, so if I'm adhering to the basics and you're not, you know, these computer programs are going to hit on you first, because it takes longer to hit on me. So if I'm able to do, if it takes too long for my stuff because I'm adhering to the basics, but I can get 10 of you because you're running slower, because you're not following the basics, well, I'm 10 ahead than, you know, dealing with it being harder to get my stuff. So that's why we want to adhere to the basics. Again, to reiterate, you know, really this is my stated goal, that, you know, I want you to know these things because they're true and they're real. You know, this is about being sheep in the midst of wolves. You know, the wolves are hackers and, you know, the nefarious folks that are using this information to harm us. But I'm also not suggesting that we stop using technology. We just be smarter about it. So, know what you're doing, and if you don't know, then perhaps you shouldn't be doing it. You know, so, you know, I already described, if you go to a website and suddenly there's this red, you know, information on the address and it's blinking, that should be telling you, no, 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 don't do this. If you decide to do this, I'm sorry. You shouldn't be doing that. You know, so take a pause. Just think about it and decide whether it's really worth it to go through that gate. So here are some common traps. Clicking links in emails or websites that bring you to free stuff and or offer you money. You know, buyer beware, right? We know this. But how often do we do this? Installing software from questionable sources. Free is never free. You know, how important is the convenience of having your weather notify you, you know, of a change? I'm not saying don't do these things, but really think about, you know, why are you doing these things? And then internet messages and or phone calls telling you that your computer has been compromised. Microsoft will not call you. Microsoft, there are, if there's 7 billion people in the world, there's probably, and I haven't checked recently, but there's triple that as far as computing devices in the world. Microsoft is not monitoring 20 billion computing devices, and they're going to call you because your computer is at risk. You know, and it sounds funny, but these things really do happen. And then the worst part of it is, so you respond to this message, right? Whether it's an email or a website message or literally a phone call, excuse me, and what they do is they ask you for your credentials, right? It is. But you give it to them because Yeah, well, my computer always runs slow. You know, I'm not doing the basics. I don't know better. I'm naive to these things. I give my information because you're going to help me. You've identified a problem, or, you know, my credit card's been compromised. Let me help you, you know, fix that problem that you're having with your credit card. You give them information, and some of the worst case scenarios are you give them information so that they can connect to your machine, they can remote in, and then they take control of your machine. They put a password on it, and they say, in order for us to give you back your data, you have to give us money. Literally happens today. And what are you going to do? I didn't follow the basics. I don't have a backup. You know, so now, if I want those pictures back, or I don't want to be at risk, what are my options? Well, I'm going to give them money because I want to get, you know, my stuff back. And then you know where that goes. Okay, the first thing they do is they ask for $500. You give them $500. Now they have your credit card information, or even worse, your bank account. Right? And now they take whatever you have in your bank account, and you thought you were getting, you know, a great deal of $500, but, you know, there's real stories, real life stories of people losing retirement, and, you know, everything because of these things. So you really need to be aware that these things are true, they exist, they're real, and please, please, oh please, you know, don't fall for these things. You know, you have the information. I'm going to give you some websites that talk about this, but these are really true today. Okay, so clicking on emails or websites that promise you to bring free stuff or money promises. So here's some things to think about. Did you request the information, or did it show up in your email? You know, if you're not asking for it, then it's probably not real. You know, I can see if you went to, you know, Chase and said, hey, you know, what are the going rates, or I want to see what the, you know, mortgage refi. You know, if you're initiating that, that's one thing. But if you're just getting this stuff in your email and then you're just clicking through it, saying, you know, what did P.T. Barnum famously say? You know, there's a sucker born every minute. Well, I would bet, you know, with the internet, there's a sucker born every second. You know, and people are losing so much because of these things. Are you being asked to provide any type of account or PII, personally identifiable information? If you are, if you're being asked to do that, and you didn't facilitate that, or you didn't initiate that, buyer beware. It's probably not a good thing. If you clicked on a link, is it the real website that the link said it was? Look at the link in the URL, you know, the address bar at the top of your browser. Is it really mybank.com, or is it something else? So you get this email from Chase. Hey, we have this great deal. We have this great credit card. You click on it, and you notice that it says chase-com.ca. So, you know, it kind of looks a little weird, but CA means China. So you're going to a website in China. And again, the website is going to look real. It's going to have the homepage of chase.com. It's going to prompt you for your login, but your login isn't going to work because they don't know what your login is. So what's going to happen generally is you type in your real information. It says, you know, that password not found or some kind of error message. You keep doing it, right, and it doesn't work, so you just give up. Well, what's happened is they now have your account information. Literally, and I said this before, as soon as you click submit, you know, computer programs have gone into your account, and they know how the Chase account works. So if your credit card, you know, information is there, perhaps your bank account information is there, you know, you can be devastated in seconds, you know, by buying into these things. So again, my basic caution is don't even bother responding to the links. It really isn't worth it. If you want to know about it, use your favorite, go to the website and ask some questions. Contact us. Hey, pick up a phone, you know, deal with the automated, you know, craziness of talking to a human being. And if you are, you know, still wanting to click through the links, at least make sure you're going to the place it says you're going to. But again, my advice is don't even bother, because generally it's not worth it. It's not what you think. So what about installing software from questionable sources? Free is never free, free is never free, free is never free. If you give me a site where I have to recant, where it really was free, okay, but there's always something they want. And my response will be, free is never free, because I know for a fact that they are gathering information about you. Yeah, so even the weather apps, right? So in order for the weather app to give you the weather, it needs to know what city you're in. Why is that important? Well, I discovered, as weather.com, that, for some reason, folks in Latham are now checking the weather because, we're reporting a storm. I can sell that information. So again, you're being used rather than necessarily you getting, the value that you're thinking you're doing. So do you know the source of the software? Do you need to supply personal and or financial information to use the software? People may not think it's a big deal that I'm giving my email address away until you then get a message like a week later, hey, we have this great new service, and they present, the software presents you with your email already filled in, give us your password so that we can help supply this additional information. Some of the tricks of the trade, it happens every day. Do you have to pay any money for the software? Yeah, so it starts out by free, right? Very common thing is, I'm going to install this software, but then there's all this advertising. If you give us $1, the advertising goes away. And part of this, in my opinion, is just training us to be stupid. What's $1, right? Well, I've now been trained on, I'm now willing to do $1 for those of you that use Hulu, the TV streaming service. They now have this offer for, $3 or $5 more a month. You won't get any commercials. That decision was made, probably 2 years ago in the marketing department. Hey, for 2 years, we're not going to do commercials. But 2 years later, people are, our business model is going to be, people are so used to this wonderful service that we're just going to do a 25% upcharge and get rid of the commercials. That was planned 2 years ago. Is the software a free game, a weather program, coupons, alerts? Well, if you're doing these things, make sure your virus scanner is up to date and functioning. Write that down. We'll talk about it at 3 o'clock. Internet messages and or phone calls telling you that your computer has been compromised. These are very dangerous scams for many of the reasons I just talked about. You receive an online message telling you that your computer is infected. To fix it, simply click here and run the cleaner. Right? And many of us have probably seen that and perhaps done that. You didn't initiate this. These websites are not monitoring your personal computer. It's a trick. It's a scam. They want something from you. You received a phone call for a person saying that they're with Microsoft support and they identify that your computer has a security vulnerability. We talked about that. Do certain programs or messages always appear when you restart your computer? That's a sign that you have a virus or you have malware running. Do programs appear to run on their own? You didn't start it. Why is it doing a scan on my computer? If you didn't initiate it and you didn't ask for something automatically to happen, this is another sign that something is wrong with your technology. Does your computer mouse seem to move on its own when you aren't using the computer? Talked to a friend the other day where this was happening, and thankfully he saw this happening. Computer's running, it's doing stuff. It's nowhere near it, doing something completely different. Guess what? That's a virus. That's a program that you may or may not have knowingly installed, and then 30 days later it's doing this other thing. So check it out for yourself. So there's this whole section about internet fraud from FBI.gov. And all this stuff will be available to you after the fact. So what's wrong with this site, FBI.net? Yeah, a lot of folks don't even think about, the government uses .gov sites because they have control over that. Only the U.S. government and state agencies are allowed to use the .gov designation. So if you're going to irs.com, or you're going to irs.net or irs.ca, it's not the IRS site. And the link in the email may say irs.gov. That's just the text portion. The actual address behind that could be irs.ca. So you can see that within the address bar when you go to it. So how about this one? HTTPS, irs.gov, and I'm in presentation mode, so this isn't going to work. Oh. Let me see if I can grab this. Sorry. So if you go to this site, info get status. So I recently did my taxes online, and I wanted to make sure my e-filing happened. And through the tax software I use, it confirmed that it's submitted. But then IRS has a website to check the status. Hey, where in the process is it? It's a great feature. As luck would have it, I checked it, and guess what it said? Guess what the HTTPS had on it? It had the red. So a government site sponsored today. So if you go to this website, you will see, in fact, that it is somewhat insecure, and you have to type in certain information in order to get the status of your refund. I checked it again last night, so it's still HTTPS red. So it isn't as bad as it could be, but given what we went through with the IRS last year and information getting stolen, this is really not a good thing. Because we're in tax filing right now, people are using this website, and it's an insecure website. This is another website that I've given to you in the deck that will talk. It will show you about the top 10 or 11 scams. Some of them we talked about, but it gives you more information about it. Really, just to reiterate that these things are real. Millions of people are getting tricked into these things. So here's a checklist, some ideas. So is your technology secure? Are you up to date with your OS, your operating system, your browser, your password, or PIN? These have that protection for your sign-ons. Is your home Wi-Fi password protected and using the proper encryption? So I've given you a website that talks about this. And again, if you stay for the next part of this, we can go through some of these things. But out of the box, when you get your home router, I can pretty much tell you what the username and the password are going to be. And if I'm that stupid teenager in your neighborhood, I'm going to use that username and password because you didn't change it when you took it out of the box. And now I'm on your home network. And if I wanted to, I could run some other software that will go in and install some stuff on your laptop, and I can have all kinds of fun. So public Wi-Fi is generally not secure nor encrypted. Avoid using your personal information, your medical information, your credit card information, especially if the web or the social media site that you're using is not green HTTPS. So for example, if you're using the church Wi-Fi today, it's public Wi-Fi, it's not encrypted, it's wide open as far as it goes. And so if you're going to use the Wi-Fi here or in a Starbucks or in a McDonald's or somewhere else, you want to make sure that if you're going to sites where you're going to put in minimally personally identifiable information, and frankly more important, if you're going to use a credit card, very first thought, going back to the basics, is it green HTTPS? If it is, then you're at least secure and encrypted, from start to finish. If it isn't, then you really got to think about whether it's worth, buying that pair of shoes, while you're sipping your coffee in Starbucks, or not. Before entering any PII, HIPAA, or PCI, confirm you are on the correct website and that it is HTTPS with no warnings. We talked about that. Do you go to the site from a favorite or from a link or a search? It's the other thing I didn't talk about really is search. Search, I use it constantly. But you want to make sure that when you're clicking through things, you're going to the places that you thought you were going to. So there's some quick visual checks in order to do that. Before you install any software, confirm that your virus scanner is running and up to date. If you aren't following those basics and you're installing software, I can offer no advice for you, because you're compromising not only the functioning of your computing device, but you're also willing to give away everything about you because you're not following the basics. And then the other thing that I would recommend as far as a checklist item is, think about uninstalling programs that you no longer use. So a year ago you may have had this, travel thing that where it made sense to monitor, the status of it. Like, let's say you do Disney every couple of years and you want to get notifications, about your upcoming trip, or Southwest or something. If the last time you used that was, months ago, uninstall it, because you're just running a risk of either you're bloating your computer with having all these things running for no good reason. So it's just a good practice to uninstall stuff. Check your list of programs, and we can get into this a little later. Every month, are there new programs listed with weird names or that you don't remember installing? And I'll show you about some of that. In Windows, through Control Panel, you can actually sort by date. And so what my general practice is, I look to see if there's anything new that's been installed in the last month, and if there is, I better know why it's there. If I don't know why it's there, I'm going to just uninstall it and hope that I didn't break something. It's my personal methodology. You got to think about that, but if I don't know why it's there, I'm getting rid of it. If your computer is acting weird and you are unable to resolve it, seek help as soon as possible. It may be compromised, and sending your information to hackers via what are known as bots. So bots is really just a short way of saying robots or computer programs that are specifically designed to run all the time and wait for you to do certain things. So for example, within my organization, we have security software that will prohibit you from viewing a credit card number. So if you go to a website and it presents all 14 digits of the credit card, you're going to get a page not found. The security software will not allow you to view a full credit card number. Now, because in my company, we take and use your credit card information in order to do transactions. So on the protection side, we want to make sure that no one within our enterprise can view your credit card information. So we run security software that prohibits you from doing that. So it's a feature for you. It also protects the organization so that some goofball teammate isn't stealing your information. But the converse of a bot is, so you take that same security software, and because it can monitor that stuff, it can also then allow it to go somewhere else. So that's what bots do. They look for this information. So a computer program knows what a social security number looks like. It knows what an address looks like, knows what a phone number looks like. It knows what a credit card number looks like. So it looks for those things. As you put them into your computer, unbeknownst to you, it just goes and sends them to me sitting in my office in Russia or China or wherever, the US, and I'm collecting all this information and I'm using all this information. So that's what a bot is. So If your computer's acting weird, you really don't. You really need to take a pause and do something about it. We talked about setting up a backup schedule. You may need to do a system restore or a factory reset if your computer gets compromised. If you haven't done a backup regularly, if your last backup was on CDs from 2 years ago, well, I'm sorry, but you've lost everything since those 2 years, because the only way to fix your computer when you bring it to me is I'm going to have to do a factory reset, and none of your data is there anymore if I need to do a factory reset. Plus, you want your data to be safe. Know your environment. If you are in a public network, be extra careful when using personal information, medical information, credit card information. So common places would be a coffee shop, the airport, a hotel. Those things, even though they charge you, are generally considered public Wi-Fi, whether you're paying for it or not, and it's also generally not encrypted. The only saving grace there is do the green HTTPS check. Mm-hmm. Yep. Correct, yep. Yeah, if you're not physically typing all 16 numbers, that's why I recommend storing those things. Right. Yep. So if you're in Starbucks and you have it on file, you wouldn't that is it? Correct, yep. Yep, because you haven't supplied it on an insecure network. Yep. Yep. That's why I like the idea of favoriting things, having sites that you have been purposeful in, using a strong password, storing that information. Because the other side of it is you don't have to store your credit card information anywhere. Every website that is worth their salt will give the option of doing a guest account and allowing you not to store that information ongoing. But then what happens? You get lazy and, why do I keep having to type this information? And then you're just saving it everywhere, and on the wrong websites. So, my encouragement is you've initiated it, you know what the website is, it's an Amazon, it's a respectable website, they have the proper protection, and it's to their benefit that they not get stolen and hacked. But these other, these mom and pop places, don't do that. There's other ways to do that, and we can get into the more specifics now that we're at the end of this. So just let me say that, this PowerPoint will be available, but you have to send me an email. So there's some action on your part. I'm not going to take your names and try to remember who was here. So if you want this as a reference, I'll make it available. I'll even share it from the cloud so that you get to experience. So literally, the way I use the cloud for my personal use is this computer is hooked up to OneDrive. OneDrive is a Microsoft product that basically I can use my local storage to automatically synchronize to Microsoft servers. So frankly, as I was doing this PowerPoint and saving it, it was also being trickled to my OneDrive account. Benefit there for me is if something were to physically happen where I didn't have access to my computer, I could still get to my PowerPoint. As long as I can get to the internet and I can get to that website, I could bring up the PowerPoint. It's now backed up, it's now encrypted, so I have the best of both worlds. So I use the cloud to do my backups. So I've set up a schedule. But again, you need to know that these things, how they work, like we went through, how to do it safely, because without knowing that, I don't want you to get fooled into just providing your information all over the place thinking it's safe, it's secure. Because at the end of the day, even the mighty Microsoft could get hacked and your information could get stolen. So minimally you want to know what you're storing, where you're putting it, and how it's protected. And that was part of the checklist. So send me an email if you want this. We're going to put this up as well as far as the video goes. So I'll send you 2 links so that you have a reference to everything that we talked about. And then we're going to go dark as far as the video goes, recording. So this next part of it, if you're going to stick around to talk about specifics, isn't going to be recorded. Obviously, the reason for that is we may talk about very specific things that you've experienced, and I don't want it out there on the internet for your benefit as well as mine. All right? So if you're going to stick around, let's get back in a few minutes.